since I came from Ottumwa, then we had a city school, or city school system there. And of course, it was just about like any others. We did not have preschool classes, so when you started, you were in the kindergarten. That was your first time. So.
How many people were in your class? Do you remember?
When my senior class, then when we graduated, is about over 400, because that's a pretty good sized city. It was then. It was about 40,000 people then.
What do you think about the subjects being taught in school today?
Well, since I'm so far away from it, I'm really not too familiar with it, but Ottumwa High School was very strong on history. And it seems to me like when I speak to these young people today that they aren't too worried about history or don't even think much about history. But it was a very strong course way back then. Had ancient history, medieval history, modern history, and then 2 U.S. Civil War histories. And then even though that it's not even allowed today in this public school system, as an elective, I had Old and New Testament histories. Since I've been in Sunday school all my life, I said, boy, that's going to be a breeze. And it was one of the most difficult ones I ever, because you had to know all those Israelite kings, the Babylonian kings, Persian kings, all those Roman Caesars, and the Egyptian pharaohs. So, and by the time I got through that, I figured, that was a bad decision.
Can you tell us a funny story about when you were a teenager?
Well, in our system, we had, on Sundays, we had morning vespers, then they had what they called YF services, and that was young fellowships, and then evening vespers. And so the young people were in charge of that from 6 to 7 o'clock, and so we all were expected to volunteer to lead it. So of course my turn came up, and I had studied pretty hard on that. I worked very diligently and I got up to give my little session here, and I couldn't even remember my last name. I just went blank. And so the only thing I knew to do, I dismissed them and sent them out on their way. So they were out playing out here on the streets when they were supposed to be in there with my YF. So I just consider, well, I guess that's one of the things that you look back on. I guess, well, it was kind of funny. I didn't think so at the time, but yes, it was kind of funny.
As a child or teenager, what did you and your friends like to do?
Well, since we grew up in the Depression, so nobody had any money, and anybody that we knew of, all our friends, church friends and all that, nobody had any money. So we did a lot of roller skating. In fact, if you roller skate that much, you're bound to get pretty good at it, no matter how bad you are.
If you could go back to your school days, what would you do differently?
One of the things that I would definitely do today, if I was advising you people, and that I would have done it, was take more math. Now we were required to take 4 years of math and a year and a half of algebra, but as you'll find out, you're going to ask me more about World War II, and then you'll find out that I was wishing then how I'd taken all kinds of math, because I was involved in classes in math, and I was really struggling, even though you knew the basics. But like my wife took trigonometry and calculus and all those, and I thought, that's ridiculous, because I thought when I was in these math classes, I said to myself, what am I ever going to do with all of this? Because I was in a commercial course, so it was typing and shorthand and what they then called bookkeeping, which would be basic subjects.
What is your favorite holiday memory as a child?
Well, I suppose everybody looks back at Christmas, and even though we knew that we weren't going to be getting a bunch of gifts or anything. That was just unheard of. You never even thought about it. But anyway, it was a period of time with a lot of church activity, which we had involved in quite a bit of that, and the fact that what it was really celebrating, the birth of Jesus Christ. So we looked forward to that, really. That was my favorite holiday.
What chores did you have to do at home when you were a child or a teenager?
We didn't own much, so there weren't much to do. As a teenager, my first job, which was very difficult to find because nobody had any work there. But my first job, we didn't have supermarkets that you have today. We had these corner grocery stores, hundreds of them everywhere you looked, and you called in on your order and they would deliver it to you. And I was one of the delivery boys. I drove this pickup truck and delivering these orders. So I graduated from high school in 1938. So in 1941, of course, then we were attacked. The Japanese attacked Pearl Harbor. So, and since my parents didn't have enough money to send anybody to school, so I ended up in the military service pretty quickly. In the first place, since I had all this typing and shorthand, they said I could probably make a pretty good company clerk. So they sent me down to Camp Crowder in southern Missouri to school. And so I'm in this class, and these other kids are trying with this one finger trying to learn typing, and I'm typing all over the place. And so they said I was causing a problem, so they kicked me out of the class. So, and anyway, just fortunately, they sent me to a major that was one of our high school's commercial arithmetic teachers. And he said, do you know anything about radio? And I said, I don't know much about it. You turn it on, you hear somebody singing. But anyway, I ended up in Kansas City at a community college, I guess they call it then. It's like we seem to call them today. And so that it was all new. Then of course, then we were working with radio tubes and condensers and resistors and all that is almost unheard of today, But anyway, we'd have class in the morning and then lab work in the afternoon. So one afternoon some guy come in and he dumped all these parts, radio tubes, condensers and everything, all here in front of us, and he said, "You don't know it, but you're going to build a radio." And I said to myself, "You got to surely be kidding. I'm looking at all these parts, I'm going to build a radio." But I did. In the end, you actually got it built. And, you felt pretty, when I first turned that on and heard this country music station in Kansas City, I thought, I can't believe I did this, like I do when I see these films. But shortly after that, they sent me into an office and they said I had been selected to study a top secret system. It was called Radio Aircraft Detection and Report. It was radar, was what we know it today. In the first place, radar, you was using a cathode ray tube, and you was following this little dot, and they were telling us at that time, you're looking at you're going to see a picture on this cathode ray tube. Sooner or later, you're going to see an actual picture. And so I ended up in West Palm Beach to another one of these community colleges, and for 2 years. But anyway, finally, to make a very long story a lot shorter, I ended up as a radar technician, and that's what I did in World War II. And as I was saying, strangely enough, even though I was in the Army Air Corps, because the Air Force didn't exist then, I was in the Army Air Force, and I had never flown in a plane or had never carried a weapon. That's why even when I came home, I never joined the American Legion because I never thought I was any kind of a soldier.
What were your feelings during World War II? How did you feel about it?
Well, I thought the whole thing was ridiculous, but I was in it, and you know, we had been involved in it, and of course the Japanese and the German Nazis were our chief enemies, and so I never was real strong militarily, but our equipment was top class, and we kept it top class. I ended up then in Alaska and the Aleutian Islands, and so and the Attu Island was the farthest one out. So I could say this: I spent my first Christmas Eve in West Palm Beach, Florida, in 1942, and my last one on Attu Island in the Aleutians in 1946. And you couldn't be any farther apart geographically.
What's a memorable place that you traveled to?
Well, I suppose the one that impressed me the most, I ended up in Salt Lake City at an air base there for a while, and they sent me, and then I ended up at this Mormon temple, and which I didn't know much about Mormon religion or anything, but anyway, I went into this temple, and man, they had spent a bunch of money out there on that sand dune, so that impressed me quite a bit. I have to say, at least the structural part of it.
That's all the questions I had, but is there anything else that you'd like to talk about?
If I was going to school, your schools today, the schools you're going, well, it's so complicated that I just wonder how you'd fit in, you know, because it just bypasses. I mean, when we telephoned, when I was a kid, you lifted up the receiver, and some female, usually female voice, said, "Number, please," and you gave a number, see? And you may or may, if you were on a party line, you may or may not get that call through, because if somebody was on that other line, then you didn't. And so today you say, you know, here's your, well, I have it in my pocket now, but a phone that you can phone anywhere on earth. And then it's just almost unbelievable, you know. Our technical advancement has gone so far that well, we don't feel like we fit in anymore. Let's just put it bluntly. It's just hard to put it in words, but the advancement is to the extent that first my dad came home one day and he said, "We're going to have a car." Things had got a little better then financially, see. And so we went down to the Ford dealership, and here was this Model A Ford. We thought it was the most beautiful car I've ever seen in my whole life, and didn't think it could ever be any more advanced than it was. And he wrote out a check for $555.55 for that vehicle. You can't hardly believe that, see. Well, in the first place, he said, my dad said, I'll pay the $555, but I won't pay the 55 cents. And the guy said, "Yes, you will. You'll pay the 55 cents if you want this car." And even, we had walked down there, and we lived on 2425 East Main, so that was a pretty long walk all the way downtown. And so my dad started out the door. We were going back home. He wasn't going to pay that 55 cents. The guy came running out and said, "Yeah, you don't have to pay that 55 cents, fine." Of course, then 55 cents was worth 55 cents. You know, now you don't even think about 55 cents, but that's how far we've progressed in my lifetime, and that's how difficult sometimes it is for us to feel like we fit in. That's was all part of my life, and all this, and all these 95 years that you look back on. See.